Traders Corner is proudly brought to you by IG, the specialists in CFD trading.
Well, welcome to a fresh new season of Traders Corner. This is the first show of 2014, and as always, I'm joined by Garth McKenzie, who is the founder and editor of Traders Corner. Garth, welcome. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you. It's great to be back.
Good. It was a very good year for the program and for the portfolio last year, which we didn't really expect at one point. Before we get into maybe how the show works, for those of our viewers who've been living under a rock for the last couple of years, and to one of the trades that you've actually put on already, what kind of a year instinctively do you think we're going to have for the traders out there?
Yeah, my gut feeling is that this market is going to be quite tricky this year. I think that our overall valuation on the JSE is quite high. So my sense is that we're going to probably have a year very similar to 2011, where we'll just chop along sideways with a couple of bouts of wobbles here and there, a bit of weakness, but for the most part sideways. And then maybe a rally towards the end of the year. But I think it's going to be a difficult year. And I think that the trend trading strategy that worked very well for us last year probably won't work so well this year. And we're going to need to adapt the strategy. And I will talk about that more on next week's show, what to expect this year and how to potentially trade in a different environment that we're expecting.
Okay, but going back to what Traders Corner is all about, for those who aren't really familiar with the show, maybe sketch out to them the formats, and as we always do at the start of each new year.
Yes, okay, well, I mean, this is now the 5th year that we've been doing Traders Corner. Come August this year, it'll be 5 years, so maybe you can have a little party for us. But basically, the bullet points are up on the screen there. We start the year every year with 250,000 Rand of capital that I put up. That's 250,000 Rand of my own money that we put into a trading portfolio, and we trade that throughout the year. We trade CFDs, we trade futures, we trade options, we trade currency futures, and we look for opportunities wherever we can find them in the market, and we exploit those opportunities using the best risk management and best trading principles that we can. We'll trade now from January right up until the end of November, and then at the end of the year, whatever profits we've made by November will be donated to charity. We also never risk more than 2% of our trading capital on this show. So with a starting capital of 250,000 Rand, what that means is that we will never allow ourselves to lose more than 5,000 Rand on any individual trade. That works out at 2% of our capital available to us. The nice thing about losing 2% of your money is that you've still got 98% left if it goes wrong. So that still gives you a pretty good, strong fighting chance, even if you get your trades wrong. As I mentioned, the profits are donated to charity, and this show is really all about promoting proper trading principles. Everything I do to do with Traders Corner, be it this show, my website, the courses that I run, it's all about promoting proper trading principles, teaching people the correct way to trade, how to manage risk, how to size their positions correctly, all that good stuff. Things that can make you consistently profitable and successful as a trader.
And actually, as we have seen in our 5th year of the show, and it doesn't always seem that way. I mean, go back to the beginning of last year where it took almost 3 or 4 months actually for us to notch up a decent profit, but you stuck to your guns. So without blowing your skirt up too much, Garth, it has worked and the evidence is there. But maybe let's talk about some of your goals for this year. Are there any different to what they were last year? Have you decided to change anything about how you actually trade the market?
No, so that's the thing, that these goals that I've got here are actually the exact same goals that I had for 2014. And I think for 2013 rather. It's always a good idea at the start of the year to set yourself some goals and try and achieve those goals throughout the year as a trader. And a lot of people will say, oh, well, I want to make 20 or 30% in the market this year. And that's fine, but I think you need to try and set yourself some goals that are achievable and that the money will flow as a byproduct of that. So that's what I've got here. These goals that I've set here, if I can get these things right, then I should naturally make profits as a byproduct of achieving these goals. So the first one is that I want to try and get 65% of my trades right as winners. Obviously, I'm not expecting to get every single trade right. That just doesn't happen in the game of trading. So I want to get 65% right. My winners, I want to be 3 times larger on average than what my losers would be, right? I want to be patient for high probability trades. And I think that's going to be especially important this year because, as I said, I think it's going to be a tricky, choppy type of year. And I think patience really is going to be key. in this year from a trading perspective. And then the last one is that I want to get better at selling. This is it's
sort of
been
a perennial goal.
Yeah, it's a perennial goal that we just rehash over and over. It's, for me, knowing when to sell is still the hardest part of trading. You know, finding good entry prices I can do. Executing a stop loss I can do. Knowing when to sell, now that's the difficult part about trading.
I mean, but that effectively, knowing when to sell is like saying, I know what's going to happen to the market. So it is really hard. And, it's happened to us on numerous occasions where if we hadn't sold, we would have done very, very well. Also, if we hadn't sold, if we'd held on, we would have done badly. Yeah. So, yeah, I understand that is probably one of the most difficult things to get right.
Yeah, it is. As a trader, and in my experience, knowing when to sell by far and away is the hardest part of trading.
Okay, well, we actually start the year on a very good note. And Garth, you mentioned that the rand-dollar exchange rate is something that you would be looking at towards the end of last year. So tell us, let's refer back to the conversation we had.
Yes, what we did, we spoke about this on the last show of 2013, and I said this is something that I'll be watching during the holiday period. I was having a break, but it doesn't mean I stop watching the market altogether. And we pointed this out. We said this is the rand-dollar exchange rate that we're looking at here. You can see that there's a very steady weakening trend in the rand over the last 2 years there. And we had this overhead resistance area at 10 Rand 50 on the rand dollar. And I said at that point in time that we must keep an eye on this, because if we start to see a breakout through 10 Rand 50, the likelihood is that it's going to blow out and we'll see the rand moving sharply weaker. And at the end of last year, which is more or less in that area that I'm pointing out there, you can see the rand consolidated quite nicely just underneath that 10 Rand 50. And I actually did put a trade on in the dying days of 2013, which was my first trade now for this year's show.
It's a bit like cheating a little, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so, because I did point it out last year, and I did say that this could very well be our first trade of the year for 2014, and I've stuck to my word there. I did the trade on the 31st of December,
right, okay.
2013.
I guess it's permissible. So we won't exclude what you've made, because clearly you have made some money from this already.
It's working, yes. What I want to just point out here, and this is a slide we looked at the end of last year as well, this is the performance of the rand in the first 3 weeks of the year, going back to 2003. And you can see quite clearly there that there's a very weak seasonal element to the rand during January. In 9 out of the last 11 years there, the rand has weakened quite substantially in those first couple of weeks. And the average move, in fact, has been a weakening of 6% in the rand-dollar exchange rate in those first 3 weeks of January. So, I looked at that seasonal pattern and, put it into context with the chart, put it into context with the fundamentals as well, which are not looking too great for the rand at the moment. And I thought, well, here we've got a nice trade lining up. So I did put the trade on, as I say, on the 31st of December. I went short on the rand dollar using a currency future. The spot rate at the time was 10 Rand 47. So it was basically just underneath that breakout level. And I was buying or shorting the rand rather in anticipation of a blowout through that level. The stop loss I'm using is 10 Rand 25. I'm looking for a move initially to 11 Rand, but it might go beyond that. I'll assess that as things go. In the yellow text there, I've got the levels that I traded the currency future at. The actual currency future that I traded was at 10 Rand 60. Now, if we have a look here, just to explain this to the viewers, at the top here, I've got a window showing what would be a theoretical bid-ask spread and the depth window of the spot rate for the rand dollar on the 31st of December. Now you can see, these are figures that rough figures that I've put in here.
Sure.
Bid 10 Rand 46, and the bids get lower and lower as they go down, and then the offers, these are the sellers, selling at 10 Rand 47, 10 48, 10 49, and so on. Then at the lower end here in the text in yellow, we've got the equivalent spread in the currency futures market. This is now the March 2014 rand dollar currency futures contract. And you'll notice there that the spot rate was 10 Rand 47 when I did this trade, but the currency futures price that I did it at was 10 Rand 60. Now obviously there's a premium there of 13 cents. What that premium represents is time value. Because we're trading a futures contract to March, it means that it's got about 3 months worth of time value built into it. And that premium is reflected in the 13 cents difference there. So if we have a look then at the mechanics of this trade and have a look how I did it, as I said, it's the March 2014 Rand dollar currency futures contract that I'm trading here. Every one contract of these currency futures represents $1,000 of notional trade. So I've gone short the Rand dollar at 10 Rand 47 on the spot price. My stop loss that I'm using is 10 Rand 25. My risk per contract, therefore, is 22 cents.
Okay.
Now, what I do, I'm using 2% of our account here as risk. So 2% of our 250,000 Rand starting capital is 5,000 Rand. That's how much money I'm willing to lose if this trade is wrong and I get stopped out. That's how much we'll lose. So to work that out, what you do is you actually take your 5,000 Rand and you divide it by 22 cents, and that gives you how many dollars you can effectively trade.
Notionally.
So, yeah, notionally. Okay. So $22,727. I've rounded it up to $23,000, which means that I've therefore traded 23 of these futures contracts. Now, just take a note of something here. I've referred there to the fact that I've bought 23 of these futures contracts.
Even though you actually have shorted the currency.
So this is where it gets a little bit confusing, and people need to understand when you're dealing with the currency, you need to look at what your base currency is. And in this case, we're shorting the Rand, but implicitly, therefore, we are also buying the dollar.
Yeah, okay.
So in this case, we're buying dollars. We're buying $23,000 worth of exposure. And thereby, it implies that we're actually shorting the Rand.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
I think it does. Certainly to our informed viewers, I guess. Yeah. Garth, where would you mentioned that 11 Rand potentially would be the target, so 11 Rand to the US dollar. We're not far from that. In fact, in the last couple of days, we've had something of a blowout. I mean, would you look to cut it out or I suppose, take profit on the contract there? Or do you actually see this thing breaking through 11 and running further? You know,
the Rand has a knack of every now and again just blowing out, and it can sometimes move weaker than what you would anticipate. So 11 Rand is my sort of initial target, but it doesn't feel good. This currency actually feels like it's sort of on a slippery slope at the moment, and you might find that we could weaken even further than that. So I'm not sure. I'll assess it when we get to 11 Rand. Maybe I'll take some profits at that point. But you know, a very good rule of thumb when trading the currency I've found is that if you're in a situation like this where you short the Rand, wait for the newspaper to have a story about the weak Rand on the front page of every newspaper in town, because that's pretty much going to mark the top. so you know, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. It's an unfortunate reality, but very often the hype around these things is only broadcast in the mainstream media when it's at its most extreme level.
Oh gosh, so critical of the media. All right, so what does the portfolio look like then, given that you have started off with quite a bang? Yeah,
so there we go. We got those 23 currency futures contracts on. That's sitting with a profit of 7,500 Rand for us. So that leaves us with 257,590 Rand, which means that we're 3% up for the year to date already, which is a nice place to be for the first show of the year.
It certainly is. Gives one some leeway, in fact. And Garth, you've also got upcoming courses this year, presumably.
Yes, I've booked a whole lot of dates. So there they all are on the screen. I've got high probability trading courses in Johannesburg, Cape Town, Durban, an Understanding CFDs course in Johannesburg on the 6th of February, and then the face-to-face sessions, which was an initiative I started last year, and we'll be running those every month for the rest of this year. I've got the first one of those on the 30th of January, and there I'll be discussing how we see trading in 2014 and how to trade in this choppy kind of market that I'm expecting. So anybody that is interested in attending any of these things, please email me, garth@traderscorner.co.za, and I'll send you the details.
Okay, great, Garth. We'll leave it there and we'll chat to you next week. Thanks as always for joining us. That's Garth McKenzie, founder and editor of Traders Corner.
Traders Corner is proudly brought to you by IG, the specialists in CFD trading.